The British Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery was in high spirits in the beginning of September 1944, which was reflected in his Directive 523. In this directive, British Second Army had to resume its advance on September 6th and move eastward with the aim to capture the Ruhr area, the industrial heartland of Germany. This would knock Germany out of the war in one single stroke. The vanguard of this attack would be formed by the Guards Armoured Division, which left Brussels in the early morning of September 6th. The British tanks cruised the Belgian countryside, and after reaching the Albert Canal, its supporting infantry established a bridgehead at Beringen. On the same day, the commander of 88th Corps, Lieutenant General Hans Reinhardt, got a visit from his superior officers, Army General Kurt Student and Field Marshal Walter Model. Together they sorted out the situation on the Albert Canal in anticipation of the arrival of Student's Fallschirmjäger in Tilburg, Eindhoven and Roermond. The weak 719th Division would hold the front from Antwerp to Herentals, while the patched-up remnants of the 85th Division would guard the front between Herentals and Hasselt. When Model left, he made clear to his generals that the Albert Canal should be held at all costs, and that any bridgehead had to be eliminated immediately. He was referring, without any doubt, to the tiny Merksem bridgehead north of Antwerp, which is referenced in the previous episode. One can imagine General Student's dismay when he found out that the British established another bridgehead at Beringen. But help was on the way. His trusted paratroopers were arriving in force on September 7. The same day he ordered the elimination of the British bridgehead. There were several problems, however. Though the bulk of the 6th Parachute Regiment had arrived in Tilburg, the men were unarmed and only received their equipment after disembarkment. Initially there was even no ammunition at hand. Road transportation to the front was also insufficient, despite the best efforts of Corps Command in Moergestel. The regiment had to be shuttled piecemeal to Mol by lorry, after which the Fallschirmjäger had to walk another 10 kilometers to the front at Ham and Heppen. The regiment would not be ready for the counterattack until the evening of September 8. Meanwhile, the British bridgehead was gradually expanding because the Guards Armoured Division was continually crossing troops over the Albert Canal, which were fanning out in all directions. General Student was however confident that he could crush one of the finest troops of the British Army by his newly arrived paratroopers. 3 regiments and 1 battalion attacking from the northeast, and 2 battalions of the 6th Regiment and 1 independent battalion would attack from the northwest. Despite the high hopes and the concerted effort, this attack on September 9 was struggling. The planned attack from the northeastern direction proved impossible, due to the clash with the advancing British. In the sector of the 6th Fallschirmjäger Regiment, the attack started in the early morning at 3 am with artillery support. At Oostham, the 1st Battalion and Vinzel's unit bumped promptly into the vanguard of the British 8th Armoured Brigade, consisting of 2 companies of the 12th King's Royal Rifle Corps and a squadron of the 4th 7th Royal Dragoon Guards. This vanguard had liberated the village of Oostham the day before, but the British had left a squadron of tanks in the village during the night in case the Germans would counterattack. As a result, the 1st Battalion of von der Heydte's regiment became pinned down, as they lacked anti-tank weapons. Vinzel's unit was reduced to several dozen men and withdrew to Leopoldsburg for rest and refit, because it had already experienced several days of constant combat. Meanwhile, the Coldstream Guards Combat Group was preparing its own advance on Heppen, which had failed the day before. After a preliminary artillery strike, they attacked at 8:45 and drove the battered Germans out of Heppen after a short but fierce battle. This was not the only German setback that morning. The prospects of a successful attack of the 6th Parachute Regiment were bleak at the end of the morning. The attacking Fallschirmjäger had taken significant losses. British tanks prevented all-out attacks. The artillery was running out of ammunition and the contact with the advancing 3rd Battalion was lost. The 3rd Battalion had been bypassing British strongpoints by a cross-country advance through fields and forests. At 1 o'clock the battalion got as far as the village of Terwante Heide. At Heydte, the battalion commander, Lieutenant Walter Ulmer, decided to make a dash for the bridge at Beringen with a small platoon of Fallschirmjäger, supported by engineers, to blow up the bridge in a kind of commando-style fashion. They didn't get very far, however, because the Fallschirmjäger bumped into the encampment of a British supply column. The Germans wreaked havoc and burned dozens of supply trucks. In the ensuing firefight, the Fallschirmjäger were dispersed and Lieutenant Ulmer was taken prisoner. The detection of German paratroopers in the British rear set off all alarm bells at the headquarters of 8th Armored Brigade, and the 13th 18th Royal Hussars in Beverlo were ordered to dispatch 2 troops of tanks to clear the road between Beringen and Beverlo. The sudden appearance of tanks spelled trouble for the 3rd Battalion, and it dug in a hedgehog formation to defend its positions. Meanwhile, the 1st Battalion was still harassing the British at Oostholm by regular mortar and sniper fire. The British casualties mounted, and B Company of the King's Royal Rifle Corps was replaced with C Company to beef up the defence. It's not known whether the infiltration of the 3rd Battalion of von der Heydte's Fallschirmjäger and its threat to the supply lines of the 8th Armored Brigade had any influence on the decision, but just after 6:30 the order came from brigade headquarters to evacuate Oostholm. The troops retreated to Beverlo under the cover of 2 squadrons of the 4th 7th Royal Dragoon Guards, which were patrolling the road between Oostholm and Beverlo. The British did not have a continuous front line in this sector, but concentrated their efforts on capturing crossroads to keep up the advance. They deployed tank squadrons to patrol the gaps between their spearheads. As a result, the counter-attacker Fallschirmjäger could infiltrate behind the British positions. The taking of Oostholm was a consolation prize for von der Heydte's regiment, because the prime objective of Beringen Bridge had not yet been reached, and it would not be reached anytime soon, because the 3rd Battalion at von der Heydte was getting into deeper trouble. At Beringen, the Dutch Princess Irene Brigade was put on high alert. This unit was stationed in Beringen to protect the bridge, but it could not hope to defeat the German paratroopers on its own. Thankfully, the 11th Armored Division was passing through Beringen and detached the 3rd Royal Tank Regiment and the 8th Battalion of the Rifle Brigade to deal with the Fallschirmjäger in von der Heydte. The 1st and the 2nd Dutch battle group would form up right behind the British unit to mop up any remaining German troops. In the evening of September 9th, the British drove the Fallschirmjäger back with the Princess Irene Brigade collecting dozens of prisoners, while hussars tried to cut off the German retreat. The first attack of the reconstituted 6th Paratroop Regiment did not reach its objectives, and it was a bitter experience in uneven combat against British armour. But the British had also their first taste of setbacks since their outbreak from Normandy. The German paratroopers had not managed to drive the British back behind the Albert Canal, but Montgomery's plan to take the Ruhr industrial area in a clean sweep was also in tatters, and he had to content himself with a bridgehead at Beringen surrounded by Student's paratroopers. If you like my content, don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell to get notifications for new content.